So I've had a couple of people over the last few weeks asking about my settings, like what button layout I use and what my sensitivity is and stuff like that. And I was unsure if I wanted to actually make a video on it. And then I was having a really good game on Loba and my random said this.
So do you do anything like special to be good at aiming, or do I just suck ass?
And I felt like that was just a sign. That was a sign that I should just do it. So that's what I have for you today. Now listen, I may not be the most sweaty, most insane controller player there is, but what I can tell you is that even as a slightly more casual player, these settings have improved my gameplay so much and in such a short period of time. So believe it or not, the first things that you are going to want to do are outside of Apex itself. So you're going to want to open your NVIDIA control panel, go to change resolution under display, and then make sure that your refresh rate is the highest that it could possibly be. For me, by default, this was set to 144, and I had to come in and manually change it to 165. And then the next thing that you are going to want to do is go to manage 3D settings, scroll all the way down to low latency mode. And by default, this is set to off, but you are going to want to change it to ultra. And what this does is just going to make your game as responsive as possible, and it's going to just feel so smooth. And then the next thing that you are going to want to do is go to Steam, go to this cogwheel here and hit properties. And under general, well, I was having an issue with the game not opening full screen, so I had to insert this here in order for it to open full screen. But the important part is this part here. So in the new season, they introduced the DX12 beta, and supposedly here it says it should now perform better than DirectX 11 for the majority of players. And that's what this code is here. It allows you to use the DX12 beta, which I'm not going to pretend to know everything about it, but from what I understand, it's just a major update that they're doing to their rendering engine. And I do feel a difference. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I'm shooting straighter. I feel like the game feels smoother. I feel like it also just looks better, but that's just my opinion. It could be in my head, but I've seen other people say the same thing. So I'm just gonna go with it. It feels good. Even if it's a placebo, whatever, I'm playing better. And I could leave this in the description or as a pinned comment, but if you want to look it up for yourself and you want to read more about it, it was in the patch notes that they posted from the beginning of this season on their Twitter, on the Apex Legends Twitter. And it's at the very end, and they leave a link to a Reddit post that just kind of describes everything. And at the very end of this post, it explains how you add this to the EA app and also through Steam. Now, as for my actual Apex settings, I feel like one of the most important things is to reduce as much visual clutter as possible, especially for me because I can't see anyways, really. And if you're newer to the game, these are really good changes to make. And if you're not new to the game but haven't really messed around with the gameplay settings and just kind of left everything on default, this is a really good place to start. I'm gonna kind of go through them quickly, but if you want, the description of what everything does is on the side there. The first thing you want is the interact prompt style. You want it on compact. You want the button hints off, the crosshair damage feedback off. The damage numbers is on stacking. I left the enemy health bar enabled. The ping opacity I have on faded. The enemy highlight I have on still. The obituaries are on. The mini map rotation is off. And this one is really important. The weapon auto cycle on empty, you really want that off, because when it's on, what happens is if you empty your entire clip and have no more ammo, it's gonna automatically switch to your other weapon. But what you are probably already doing is switching to the other weapon anyways, so you just kind of double swap back to the weapon with no ammo in it. So you want to make sure that's off. I have always sprint on. I have auto run off. I have jetpack control on hold. I have incoming damage feedback on 2D. This is another important one. Taking damage closes death box or crafting menu. You want that off. So this allows you to armor swap. When this is on, if you're trying to armor swap or you're in a death box for any reason and you take any sort of damage, it kicks you out of the death box. You want off-screen portraits off, again, just reducing as much visual clutter as possible. You want the hop-up, pop-up off, and then the rest of this is all just preference, really. Now going over to my actual controller settings, we'll start with button layout. So I have tried so many different button layouts, and the one I'm using now is the best one I've used, hands down. And I think it's worth getting used to if you are thinking about switching up your button layout. If you have it on default and you want a button layout that is maybe a little bit better, I highly recommend doing this. So I do use a DualSense Edge controller. I know this shows Xbox buttons, but I use a PlayStation controller. So I have jump on L1, I have crouch on my right stick, I have interact, pick up, reload on R1. These are just default. I have my tactical ability on X technically, but I do use paddles. So I have my tactical ability on my left paddle, but I don't always have to use it. Having it on my left paddle makes it just easier to aim where I'm going with like Loba's bracelet, makes it easier to aim knuckle clusters, just things like that. But I don't necessarily have to use it. I still sometimes do use X, especially if I'm on somebody like Wraith or Alter where you don't really need to aim anywhere, or like stimming with Octane, anything like that. It's just more convenient for me to have it on my back paddle. And then I have my pinging on square. I have my toggle zoom on my left stick. These are all default. My toggle fire mode, like with the car, or like to make like anything single fire, I have it on my left D-pad. And then my ultimate ability is on
upgrade.
Okay. Okay, Octane. And then my ultimate I have on square and X. Which honestly, having my ultimate ability on square and X is kind of a game changer for me. I don't know why I like it so much, but it's so easy to just move my thumb and just hit both square and X at the same time. I know the regular default is I think L1 and R1, and that's also not very hard to do, but I just prefer the square and X. And besides that, I use my right paddle to talk in game, as you can probably see right there. So now I'm gonna go down here to my actual sensitivity. I am a typical controller player. I use 4:3 linear, but I will say this, I have used a lot of stuff. I used to play on 4:3 Classic. I played on 5.5 Classic. I played on 5.4 Classic. I have used ALCs, but in my opinion, I'm not a fan of Classic, first of all. Second of all, I really did like ALCs, but I just don't play the game enough. Or more specifically, I don't play the game consistently enough to be really good on ALCs. So like I said earlier, if you're a more slightly casual player, I think 4:3 linear is a better option than ALCs, and definitely a better option than Classic. And I use no dead zone, which I much prefer over small.
Time to make a choice.
Shut up, Wraith. Yeah, I just prefer no dead zone over small dead zone. However, I do know that a lot of controller players use small dead zone, so if you use no dead zone and you don't like it, maybe try small dead zone and see if you prefer that. And then I also have obviously my movement dead zone on small. And another really important thing that I think that people overlook is to have your vibration off. One of my friends, I'm not gonna name names, Snowflake, leaves his vibration on, and I think that's just a little bit psychotic. So if you have vibration on, turn it off. Another thing that is really important that I think people forget about is this. When you go to your ALCs, turn them on and make sure that the dead zone is set to 0 and make sure that the response curve is set to 0, because your ALCs bleed through into your normal settings even if they're off. So you want to make sure that these are at 0 to get a true 4:3 linear experience. So now we're going to go over to the video settings, and we're just going to change a couple of things here. Now here I've played on normal resolution and I've played on stretch res before too. And as much as I do really like stretch res, I always just come back to normal resolution. I know other people that swear by stretch res and that play on it consistently, but me personally, I just feel better on normal resolution, even though I can agree that stretch res is good too. So I think that might just be a personal preference thing. I have my brightness at 65. I have my FOV at 110. I have the FOV ability scaling disabled. The sprint view shake is set to minimal for me. I have VSync disabled. I have NVIDIA Reflex on enabled plus boost. And I have the adaptive resolution FPS target at 0. And this is the most important part to me here, anti-aliasing. I have that off. And listen, at first, it might look a little bit weird. The edges around might be a little bit fuzzy. It might take your eyes like a little bit to get used to, but I promise you that it is so worth it. I feel like I'm able to see enemies better when anti-aliasing is off, I feel like everything looks and feels a lot smoother. Again, it could just be a personal preference, but I promise you, try it and it's worth getting used to. And the rest of these down here, it just really depends on how good your PC is. Personally, I have a decent PC, but even so, I have things set to like medium, and I have the model detail and the map detail on high, but I have effects detail on medium, and the rest of it I have on low. I also set the sun shadow coverage to low. I have the sun shadow detail on low, which is really important too, because I used to have those on high and I didn't even know, and I was so like, why is the sun blinding me in the eyes? Like I can't see anything. I can't see people on buildings. So make sure you have those on low. And the same thing with spot shadow detail. Make sure you have that on low as well. So yeah, that is all that I have for you. Hopefully you found that information useful. Hopefully there's something in there that can somewhat improve your gameplay. If your gameplay needed improvement, I don't know, maybe you're just the best. But anyways, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you have a good day. Bye.